Ladies and gentlemen, the first 30 seconds or so of the meeting was not recorded as it was muted. Essentially, the president of council welcomed everyone to the meeting, entered directly into the agenda, which was to review the agenda for tonight's council meeting. We'll pick up on the first item, I believe, even on that.
Any of these, the Acorn Park improvements and
Yeah, numbers 10, 11 are going to be the two pieces of the outdoor classroom. So benches and then the shelter that we had picked as well to cover that. So it's going to be 9 log benches. I believe we are doing 6 foot benches and 3 4-foot benches. So it should provide us with seating for, what we figure, 22 people at any given time. And then the shade structure or the gazebo, however you want to call it, is about 10 by 20. So it should give us a nice platform stage. And then we're also looking into building an outlook off the back of it, because where it sits in the park, it will kind of overlook Little Twickley Creek. So should look really nice, should present really well for us, and then we'll get some programming in there. I know Dave Gray already is very excited to bring Eco back to Acorn and to do some presentations out of there. I also know North Park has a bunch of good nature things that we can probably partner with them on. And then the cedar benches are, again, part of Acorn. They go a couple around the playground and random areas like that. And those are the 3 on there for Acorn.
Cedar benches are the same kind we've been using for a memorial program. We've got the 2 items for the outdoor classroom as pending approval by DCNR, because we have submitted them to DCNR, but DCNR does have to formally authorize us to order them, and we didn't want to wait another month in the hopes that DCNR will turn this around in a week and then we can go ahead and person.
all right. Those are those last 3. Number 8 and number 7 were discussed at the work session. Rejection of the bids, Clover Hill, and the payment to NFPAA. Number 6, we're moving forward on MS4, Montgomery Road and Ramblewood, have been advertised. In terms of timing, the ratification. Well, when bid openings are coming up pretty soon, 25th.
And that's just Ramblewood, because Montgomery
Right.
is going through the cog.
Correct.
Oh.
So Montgomery, yeah, there'll be an actual bid opening at the college office. They can go on administration.
Didn't do that. Okay, with that. And then on the public hearing for the zoning ordinance, planning commission met last night. Understanding, not Tim, but we do have other members, other attendees. They recommend approval. They don't have any additional comments on revisions or otherwise. Others were in attendance.
We talked about it a little bit, since we're gonna vote on it and have a hearing on it.
Sure.
One of the things they did approve it. I did speak about it at the meeting last evening. One of the confusing things, and it's still confusing to me, so maybe I'm not reading it right. For the maximum building height, the current table, before we look at this change, says 2 plus a basement. Current table. So this one says, and this confused them last night. They really couldn't understand it. I can't understand it either. It says 3 plus A, comma B. So what does that mean? Does that mean it can be a basement, 3 full floors plus an attic?
Yeah, I think in terms of Tim's the
So it's
star for this.
so it's
So it
going
could be
from
pretty cool.
3 stories maximum to 5. So it's 2 additional floors we're adding, not 1.
I mean, in terms of the way that it came out of the land use committee was just make all of them the same. So that's all.
I'll be voting no on it if it's that high. 3 living floors plus an attic loft is 4 floors plus a garage, a basement level. It's 5-story building. To me, that's excessive for that kind of a environment. I was okay with 2 living floors plus an attic loft. It's 3 levels, living levels, the way that people are developing them, but not 4.
Is that bigger than the ones that Altmeyer, probably Marshall?
Yeah,
That's actually taller than
I
those?
think it's 1 additional floor.
Whoa.
The way that's written, yeah, we can.
So
I think-
that was confusing, and there was questioned by people on the planning commission last evening. And they didn't understand how it's written in the table, and I didn't understand it either. So the only way I can read it is it allows 5 floors.
And you're concerned aesthetically that's too tall.
Pretty tall. I mean, you're talking first floors, the garages, and up 1, 2, 3 living levels, and a loft level attic is 4.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just, I
I think it's
understand
too
that's
tall.
your concern. Like aesthetically, looking at that building, it's gonna be too tall.
Too tall, and I think functionally, it just seems like I came in and I wanted to go to the top floor, I'm going up 4 flights of steps from my garage to the attic level.
These ones across from Altmeyer. I've actually heard that they're installing elevators and those things.
Oh, yeah, they're putting elevators in. I think it came down to, we had a discussion last night at the planning commission about what's our goal here? This is a totally different type of a building than the current ordinance. It was developed, from what I heard, and I wasn't here then, in 2007, it was added to in the comprehensive plan, is when the current townhouse ordinance or the requirement.
Multifamily. Yeah.
Multifamily was addressed. And it was done, again, this is what I heard, to allow it, but not to make it a predominant thing, since Franklin Park at that time was mostly single family dwellings. So they realized they gotta do something. Well, now I think you're,
So we had, I mean, multifamily, requirements, or at least in terms of it being a permitted use in various zoning districts with certain dimensions. The idea in 2007 out of the comp plan is we don't want, sort of like Soviet looking buildings. They're just square with no architectural interest or features. So the amendment was to put in design features through the zoning ordinance, which really shouldn't, but really shouldn't get into aesthetics or so, to make it look like, more like, broken up, not so Soviet and brutalist or so. So I don't know in terms of, the table or what changed, but that was the motivation that led to the section that got added that put in, these, unbroken wall restriction. The garage door restriction. So there was always a townhouse use, there was always an apartment use. That's why we had apartments, changed Taylor Ridge, just 20 some years or so. So that's before all that. But the idea, at least at that time, was to, make them more aesthetically pleasing by breaking them up. So, but I can't say, and I haven't pulled and looked at what was on the books before 2007, except to know we had uses. I don't know.
I actually wanted to go back and read that 2007 comp plan, but I could not find it on the website. I looked, and it might still be there, but
Everything has been replaced.
yeah,
Probably isn't.
it wasn't available to read, but from what I heard, that's actually kind of when it got its start. I just personally think that's too high for a residential living, to have 4 livable floors, 3 living. I mean, you could have 2 floors of bedrooms and still have a loft, study, and everything else. I mean, that's really getting up there. I just don't think we build hotels that are only 5 stories high. And you're talking townhouse.
Yeah, and I talked to some of the residents too, and I think their position is a little bit misstated, especially from the developer's aspect. He says they want this. Well, that's not entirely true. They want this as opposed to the other but it's a neighborhood. I'd much rather have single family houses there. So to say that they want this, I wouldn't say that. I would say they like this plan better, whether they know that it's gonna be, could be up to 5 stories, I don't know. I don't know if any of them will be here tonight, but I share Tom's concerns. 5 stories, excuse me, is very high. And while I know that this is just for the M1 district, it does seem to me like we are not encouraging, but saying that we're open to this more than we have been in the past, where we've encouraged single family housing. Now we can, maybe we like
Well, it's
4 or
for,
5-story townhouses.
it's for the R2, the R3, the M1, and the M2. They're going for all 4 districts. So it could be-
That's one of my concerns with this is, who are we encouraging through this development? And New Day and I spoke to this morning, just to throw it out to the others. And my concern is that right now it's restricted to this one area, but what's the possibility, once we have this going, that it can now be extended into other districts, and all of a sudden we're encouraging intensive development and putting pressure on our population, the school system, and those kind of things. I'm just thinking through that, and because I think from what I understand, this is a very developers are keen to this development, and because, and what's the chances of this developing or being pushed up when we get it there, of being used as just an example for putting it other places where maybe even now we show we can't do it.
The ones at the end of Wexford Run are a garage, 2 floors, and an attic. So we're gonna allow 1 additional floor above and beyond this, the way the table is written.
But will have to be a basement though.
Well, the
Right.
garage counts as the basement.
It's 3 plus AB, so it's 3 living levels plus attic plus base.
Right, but on those, the basement would be below that.
No, there's no basement. There's no basement in the one.
Right, but if that did have a basement, you wouldn't see it from there. It would be further. Right, so it would be 1 floor higher.
Is that definitely house defined?
You would, yeah, you'd have a slope, basically, you would slope,
Like the one.
whatever the degree is, and it would be a basement. that you'd want.
What'd you say?
Also, that garage
You
has,
go subterranean to see the basement floor, the
Point of-
topography would drop off.
I apologize, I don't know what
Yeah,
the policy allows.
yeah, there's a public hearing afterwards.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, the developer's not looking for that.
Okay,
Well, we can address it
we'll
out.
talk about it.
Okay, sure,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, so, and also at the basement level, it does have living space typically. You don't just have the entire floor as just the garage. If you were to look into the picture, the common approach is to have some sort of rec room or whatever it is. So that's how you count that as a livable floor.
The ones on Wexford Run don't have a subterranean basement. They have a garage. Now, whether there's storage
Yeah.
behind where the cars are or some livable space, I don't know that. I've not ever been in those. You can see from the picture, there's a front door that goes up. I'm assuming steps that go up to the first.
Yeah,
living.
and that's a very common design in the US. I mean, if you look at other markets.
But that doesn't count as a basement, am I correct?
I was waiting.
We're still-
I think that's fine. And just, and my concern is, as we just heard, maybe this one developer doesn't want that, but if we're saying you can have 3 plus AB,
Well, I think that's an important question to know the answer to.
Right, the planning commission last night talked about that. They didn't quite understand, well, what does this actually mean? And I think at some point after they got to feed into submission, they said, we'll approve it. I guess, I don't know. But they never did get the answer to that question.
do we have a basement defined somewhere?
Yeah, we need to know what a
Yeah,
basement is. If
surely
it's
we'll have it,
subterranean,
Right.
then you're not talking about 3 living, you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's gotta be economically feasible, so you can't just build 5 floors.
Right.
You know,
So-
the market's not, the market demands,
Yeah,
In
that,
They
in
can
that
have
picture, is that
these
the garage? I counted the garage as the basement level.
I don't know, I would not.
I don't think so.
So we have to figure out that answer.
Hmm.
I'm not married to 1, to 3, or 2. But help me understand why you think this is gonna open the floodgates for more development.
Well, I just think it, you know, $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 townhomes that are mega, it's just gonna be a different type of living. I mean, I don't know what kind of, you're probably not gonna have, I'm guessing, I shouldn't stereotype people because I don't know. You're probably not gonna have, people with young children in this, more than likely.
I would assume.
That could be wrong. You know, I knew growing up in the 50s, 60s, 70s, people with 3 kids, like I grew up in a 3-kid family. We had a small little lot, one-story ranch house. Now, maybe there are people that are living in 4-story homes with young children. It's possible. The demographics and everything could have changed. But I think I like this design that the one in Wexford run. I agreed with the 2 floors and I agreed with the attic. And I like even though I know Tim didn't like the wider garage doors, and I explained that last night. I like the 16-foot door because you can get 2 cars in.
Yeah.
And you can get a car behind each one of those garage doors should you have visitors.
Yeah,
So you can really have your 2 cars or whatever, 1 car plus 1, and you can have visitors. The way that was designed, we saw a year ago, you have a 12-foot door and a single lane driveway, which means that you can only get your car in and maybe one in there. If you have any guests, then they're gonna be parking on the street.
right.
And it was all on-street parking. The street was 24-foot wide.
Yeah, well, and there's not a lot of curb there if everyone's got a driveway.
Right.
But even if this isn't families with small children, I don't understand, is that a problem?
I just
I'm just wondering I'm trying to understand your perspective.
I'm just thinking it's the characteristics of, and we don't have these anywhere, and the question is, is Franklin Park okay? We didn't talk about this during the comprehensive plan process. Are we okay from moving from, residential, single-family lot homes, which, 46 years ago when I bought my house here, that was predominantly all that was here. We keep adding these other uses. Is this a use that the borough wants to add? Large, costly, high townhomes. And I mean, maybe it is, but I think that's some aspect of this that's going to change the character of some of our neighborhoods to some degree. And I just think we never really discussed that.
But you think this ordinance, if we pass it as is going to encourage more of these across
think
the
so.
borough? Okay, I think that's the disconnect that I'm not understanding why we're assuming this is gonna mean there's more of these, just based on this ordinance.
Well, there's,
I mean, obviously there'll be more like that if this is what we allow, but I don't understand why this will automatically mean we'll have more townhouses. That's the missing.
well, right now, they're only allowed at a small scale. And this will allow them to be a much more luxurious living type.
let's just pretend this ordinance didn't exist. What is there to say that you could not build a townhouse in R2 right now?
You can, but the table only allows it to be 2 floors. It
Right,
only allows the 12-foot garage door to be that make it one.
but
floor.
you could still build it, right?
Yeah, still building.
Right.
We allow them, but we allow
Yeah.
them, maybe just by the virtue of how our current requirements are, it keeps them more of a smaller scale type of a living.
Yeah, I understand. from a
And
volume
I
perspective.
understand there's concerns that that scale might be a rental, not an ownership. And
It could be either.
I empathize with that. I mean, that's probably
Right.
true.
One of the discussion points during the planning commission yesterday is what is the change in the marketplace? The buyers, right? So the buyers that do have children, they are going to townhomes. They are looking for minimal maintenance, minimal or no maintenance. I mean, that is a desirable function out there. Yes, there are buyers that want a yard. They want to mow their lawn like you do, or I do sometimes. But there are a lot of buyers that do not want to deal with this. They want a low to minimal maintenance. The townhouse does, yes, it is different than single family detached homes in the community. But if you were to look around at what is being built, it is luxurious. I mean, I'd imagine a lot of these townhomes townhomes at that price, one, they will be at the high end in terms of luxury, but space wise. You, there's gotta be an economic case to build something multiple stories. So it's not that you would just en masse build a townhouse with double wide garage, the design you showed, you know, it's not common that you'd see something like that or larger.
Tom,
for
are you
example.
saying, oh, sorry, go.
No, good.
Are you saying, is your concern that if we're building, if we allow these taller, presumably more luxurious, more expensive townhomes, developers are gonna wanna build them more, and then it's more of a density issue, is that? Okay, so you're concerned
That's
that.
why, I mean, if you look at this specific instance, the developer's already saying it's not profitable enough to build the original plan.
Okay,
So what they want to do is then have the same amount, but build bigger.
okay, but the same amount of units.
This, I believe so, yeah. But this then is, you know, it's encouraging that type, in my opinion, it's encouraging that type of build as opposed to a single family build, because you're gonna make a lot more. You're gonna make a lot more of these. So I think Tom's question is that the way we want to go? And I guess that's.
We want to open it up so that we can permit these, and not just in the M2 where this one's located. We're putting it in R3, R2, M1. We're
So-
allowing it in much more.
If this were 2 plus AB, that would,
I think that would be more reasonable. I'm okay with one basement floor or garage, whatever you want to call it, because most of
well, we
these,
have to figure out what that means.
yeah,
That
most of
is-
these
that
don't
does
have a
make difference.
basement. Most
Yeah.
of these don't have a basement.
I do have a definition of basement.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
The space enclosed by the foundation or ground floor wall of the building partly below the average level of the adjacent ground. Basement shall not be counted as a story for the purposes of height measurement unless 1/2 or more of its volume is above the average level of the adjacent ground.
So it has to be submerged half or more.
Yeah.
to count as the basement.
And I presume, well, it doesn't say that, but I presume it has to be submerged in the front of the house, but I guess I should presume like it doesn't say that.
So you go back.
It could be back,
Yeah, yeah. Like, for example, Georgetown. It's not half, but
Through the
you
hill.
can walk in and then in the back, there's. You
But by
drive
that
in and then you step up.
definition,
It
you
would not-
could
they
have a
would-
fall off on the front of the house
Yeah.
and still see.
Or
the
vice
basement
versa,
front.
probably.
Okay,
Which is costly to build. But in the case of Wexford Run, the one part of
It's not the basement.
They wouldn't.
the bottom counts as.
You can go behind us and they're just, you could drive straight through.
Yeah.
That road.
So our ordinance lets you have a subterranean basement, and then the floors like we're seeing there, is that right? And then,
As long as 50% or more. of the
Yeah.
basements,
right,
and an attic can be full living space,
you know.
right?
let's find
I mean,
out.
that does make a
It did
difference.
not, I think that was part of the discussion last night, like they were. I'm not attic.
I think in these, it is a full living space, right, Tom, as far as you can.
Well, that's what they're doing. Instead of insulating the top floor, they're insulating the roof structure coming down, and they're putting a loft or a balcony looking down onto the floor below.
So we're not
or-
talking a full 10 feet and then a peak,
So it's not,
or are we guessing here? We don't
We
know.
don't know for sure.
do we have a definition of an attic?
We don't.
That makes us
I need a definition of an attic, because the way.
Definition IRC,
Yeah, I would,
International Residential Code IRC.
Thanks.
they used, but you also be going by just the dictionary definition.
Right.
Okay,
And that's what code inspectors need to do in terms of everything else. But I mean, the other point I was gonna make, I mean, if you look at our zoning map, R1, okay, townhomes aren't allowed in pink, light pink or so, there's salmon aren't allowed in the R2 or yellow throughout there, are allowed currently, you know, regardless. It's an R3 is pretty much developed now, although it's north of, that's south of Sorgles or Sorgles area would be undeveloped. But you've got Deerfield and all that green right now. You know, the R4, which was allowed, is all ridge forest. Essentially, although there is some room across the Wexford Bay, I think that might be the property that has the for sale something, but
At least the M3 along with the big swing.
The IRC has two types, habitable and. So,
Very little changes.
yeah,
So like the shortals on both sides of Granite School is all appears to be, M2.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, that would be, should Sorgels decide they no longer want to be a farm, then Sorgels can have townhomes.
I can now, but yes.
They could.
And then they could have townhomes like is being proposed now, right?
Right, and this is also, that's it, this is M2 as well, so.
Right.
Okay, well, let's get down to brass tacks. Do you feel strongly about 3 plus AB, obviously? Does anybody feel strongly about keeping it? Like, does anybody really oppose if we bump it down to 2?
I'm saying basement. Because most likely it's not gonna be 50% buried the way they're building these on flat plains. So I'm okay with that, that's the basement. 2 living floors, and if you want a loft for the attic, that's the 3rd floor, a livable. And then
Yeah, so right now it says 3 plus AB, but you want that to say 2 plus AB.
Right, I think that's more reasonable, that's what they're building at the end of Wexford Run. They already looked at this at that height, but if you put 1 more floor in them.
How did we come out of committee on this? I remember we talked about it.
Well, we focused more on the maximum height that the firefighters can
Yeah, I
extinguish
remember
by, is 50 feet, I believe. But I don't know that that's the guide, that should be the guiding principle for how high of a.
Right, we don't necessarily need to go that high, but
So Max, what does it take to go 2A?
Well, I'm looking at where it is. I mean, you've got 2AB already in the M1. It's tough to read.
Yeah, right.
It's just small, so. Nah,
Yeah, we don't,
I got my computer with it.
oh, you're looking for.
I'm looking at the current one.
we have 2 plus AB.
is this what the developer is asking for, 3 plus AB?
Wait, I'm sorry, we don't.
Or they ask for 2 plus AB?
That's not popping out.
And not that we have to abide by what they're asking for, I'm just curious. I don't remember how we got there.
I've got an email.
No, I think, Max, I think you're right. I think right currently we have 2 plus A, comma, B. Or, so I'm saying that, I mean, A can be an attic or A can be a loft livable floor. So maybe to that extent, we don't need to change it from what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, maybe just.
Attic
put
is
in
typically not
definition of
considered a
attic.
livable floor, but if somebody wants to develop their attic as livable.
Maybe we just put in the definition of attic.
I think that's right. What's in that?
Right,
Or make the one you found clear,
yeah.
habitable.
Yeah, that was the.
IRC.
Okay.
That makes sense.
But just because it's not habitable doesn't mean they're not gonna make it tall. I realize economically, but like, we should guess what developers are gonna do.
Right, and I don't necessarily have a problem with it being. I mean, I guess it depends on what we call have, but, yeah,
Right.
I don't necessarily have a problem with it.
Just keep in mind if you're a buyer and it is a structure that's tall. Even if the developer does build it as a very tall height of like what appears to be 5 stories, if you count the basement.
Right.
So, the modern townhouse does have these mini elevators. So there's a price point of where it is not feasible to build that high unless you're going to go that extra mile to do that. So, otherwise you would have much more larger homes in Franklin Park, and not like Deerfield or Bliss. You have more ballistics throughout.
So back to Laura, what are we doing?
So the request in July, so for the M2 district was to change the townhouse from the current 2 plus B, 2 stories plus basement, to the proposed 3 plus B, 3 stories plus basement. It was just out of the land use committee discussion of making everything the same 4 townhomes across everyone. There was a 3 A, B, already in it in M3 or somewhere else. So recommendation was just come and make them all the same and lower the 8 stories for an apartment.
Single family is all 2 plus AB. I mean, I think we should just match it. You know what I mean? Especially when you're talking about a plan like this that's going to basically be integrated into an already existing neighborhood. That doesn't.
So you're saying instead of taking out attic or defining attic, just make it.
I think we still find out, but
I think we
we just,
probably should.
yeah, and just make it all the same.
So if the attic is one of the things that maybe makes it too tall, could we do 3 plus A or B to fix that problem?
You gotta get him to talk how he interprets these or other ones. I mean, in terms of process and procedure, the desire is to, amend the ordinance. These would be substantial changes that go back through the process to the county, planning commission, everything else. If you want to risk validity challenges, we do have the optional section 108 motion and add that would, there's a motion on the floor to change the table to something, not go through that process before. You can do that. You can do the optional notice. Somebody can still, challenge it within 30 days from the enactment, but it's not something that 40 years from now, they come back and say, well, you made a change, you didn't go through it a second time, et cetera. So it doesn't completely foreclose any challenges on the procedural side, but it shortens the time period. It would be 30 days from the second advertisement.
I think a lot of older homes, like I used to own one in Bellevue, and it had a basement and then 2 livable unit apartments on floor 1 and floor 2. The floor 2 also had access to a walk-up attic, and you could put a bedroom up there or something, but it was not the full size of the house. In the middle, it was 10 foot high, but at the sides, it was 4 foot or something above the floor. So they ran the sidewalls up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how mine is, but if you're standing in the driveway, it's 40 feet straight up. Basement, 2 floors and an attic.
So I guess I'm okay with 2 full livable floors, and if
Yeah.
a person wants to put an attic in, which this is nothing, like I have an attic at my house with a pull down stairs, and I put some Christmas gifts, things up there, It's not, you can't even stand up in it, so it's not really livable.
So, I'm sorry, Tommy, one of those sort of 2 options, but the third option is to pass it as is right now tonight, but immediately start the process to revise it, which goes through that usual process. You can declare it pending zoning ordinance, at the October meeting. It goes back, maybe there is a definition of attic added, maybe there are these other sort of changes, but it goes through the process again. So, yeah, I guess the 4th option is just table it completely and any changes at all. But those who are hamstrung by the enactment process that is in place to have the ordinance as written, advertised, and the requirement that it needs changes other than typo corrections. And I won't say it's a typo, even though it's 1 letter, close, but not a typo. It does require re-advertising and
I think it's important to understand what the definition of an attic is, but an attic's just an unusable space that exists because of the framing of the roof to get water off, then you can't even go up there, or you can virtually not get up there, then 3 floors would be okay. But if you're talking about, developing a large livable space up there plus 3 floors, I don't know, to me, that's just, I don't think that was the intent of what we were.
So where do we stand on our options? What was the section 108? What's your report?
that's number 2 or so. It's, if there is consensus, somebody makes the motion to enact the ordinance, and somebody else makes a motion to amend the ordinance, before before you even vote on it. And, states, the change to the table, whatever it is, change townhouse M2 to 2AB or 3B. I mean, that was what was requested, 3B. If that amendment is voted on, we could consider the ordinance changed, although we haven't actually taken the text or otherwise.
I think you have to change it 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, you guys somebody needs to write it to figure out what you want to change, if you want to do it that way, which, as I say, is.
What is the option of,
What about delete A? So it becomes 3B.
Well, that changes it from everything else other than apartments.
Yeah.
Everything else, single family residence, it's all 2 plus AB.
Mhm.
My preference would be to make it more in with everything else. It's just me.
Brian, I'm sorry, what was your
I
suggestion?
was saying, it sounded like 3B would fix it, because B is subterranean. So you're never gonna have the problem of the attic being added as a living space on top of the 3 floors.
True, but then if we still haven't defined attic, how high can they make the apex of the house? And just say, well, that's not an attic, that's just, I mean, right. I think since we had A listed on here in every category, I think we need to define attic.
Okay.
Yeah, my preference would be to table it and make it fine attic and leave it all.
Yeah, we may be able to, we can probably define it 1 of 2 ways. It can be anything under the roof framing, or it can be totally non-livable space. And then if it was totally non-livable, like most of our attics are, I think, in a walk up in your mind, then I'd be okay with 3 floors.
Yeah, I think
With
we'll
a
have to get to
with a
that
non-livable
Yeah,
attic.
discussion later, but that's not gonna, you have to give some sort of size restrictions, otherwise you can just say in the definition,
Right, no, you're right.
but that's for another time.
okay, so are we putting up for a vote and then clarifying the items that was happening here?
I think we should table it.
Anybody?
Does anybody have any strong feelings as to why we should leave it as it is? And it seems like we're all kind of on the same page, but I just wanna.
Okay, if we do table it, what's the due date for having the revision?
We could probably, we can do land use next month, Brian,
I mean, I don't
and
think,
maybe cement to the county.
Usually you were there last night. I think the planning commission was honestly confused about that.
I think they're confused, but at the same time, the conversation before and afterwards is they understand that, the products are changing in the marketplace and we're adapting. Like I said, the buyers these days are not interested, a lot of buyers are not interested in lawn maintenance. They want a ultra luxurious townhouse. This is very common in a lot of areas. And if we want to tailor where you're allowing this, that's one thing, but, I'm not necessarily against the product that is ridiculous, whatever you talk about. So I do want to make sure we have a due date of when we redo this, have the revision done, because, it sounds like there's some change that requires.
Yeah, I think we should just know what's going in. I think Laura has a good point. Let's define what an attic is, and then we're gonna know when somebody comes in with a set of plans. Okay, that does or doesn't meet. Is a loft room the same as an attic?
Max,
And we'll know exactly how high then it would be.
Right, right.
I mean, if you're going back and you're starting to make changes, then it's starting over the clock. Other public hearing, go through all of that process and essentially starting again.
Are you saying that you think we should make a place somewhere in the borough for townhouses that look like this? The current,
yeah,
Because
I think if the concern is you're allowing this to spread throughout like R2, which is one of the largest.
Or not, no, I mean, townhomes aren't allowed in.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah. If you're concerned about like this being in a certain area, you can take a look at the zoning districts and exclude it, modify this further if you're gonna do that.
And that's sort of the opposite of what land use committee was looking at. So if it's a townhouse, it should be the same size, regardless of which zoning district it is, which you can see both ways. I mean, yes, there's a uniformity, but the only reason you have different zoning districts is because there are different standards. Yes, they have to be uniform within the zoning district, but an R1 can be different than a M3 in terms of those dimensions. That's why we have a table. It's not done to say every town owns X.
Right.
Yeah, if those ordinance would say everything.
Yeah,
Fancy this, yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
that has changed.
okay, so where do we stand?
It sounds like, I mean, if we will still have public hearing through that when it comes to the close of it. And I've got my 9 exhibits to enter when we kick it off in terms of the process that we got here. If you're unswayed or don't want to move, rather than the motion to enact, it'd be a motion to table and refer to the land use committee for further consideration of the comments and the questions.
Okay, so that's fine. We'll still have a public hearing, put up now.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
okay,
I mean,
so,
it's a little late, yeah. We could have, but we
No, that's
already
fine.
paid you here and we've advertised and.
okay, all right. It'll be on the agenda. It'll stay there. I'll public hearing. That's the.
Is there any way to do the garage doors? I know.
We got a public, yeah, we got a public hearing. Yeah, we'll pop you on.
I know.
All right, so we'll keep that going. All right. So we're a little behind here, but, Reed, you want to go over your items?
For Acorn Park, just want to give you an update. Independent Enterprises has begun work. We anticipate, well, Independent has to have their work done by January of next year. We expect the entire project to be finished by July of next year. And our DCNR grant requires currently that the contract or that the work be completed by December 31st of this year. We are requesting a 1-year extension of their letter, even if you sign this evening. I don't think that'll be a problem since the contract says a start date of January 1st, 2021. But we didn't formally get a contract from DCNR until June of 2022. And we didn't get our permit from DEP until June of 2024. So I don't think we'll have any problem with that 1-year extension. Matterhorn MS4 project should be completed this week.
Wow.
Bramblewood MS4 project, we have a bid opening next Wednesday. And we will be seeking Penvest funding in the current cycle, which applications are due by the end of October. So we at least have that project getting ready to go. Summer Fields, we're waiting for the builder to reach out to Tim and schedule a time for a meeting with Tim, Sean, and the builder to discuss the sidewalk installation for both properties.
And you were brought up to speed on the discussion we had left.
Yes, yeah, we have a call Friday.
Thanks, Reach. Any questions for Reach? All right, the next agenda item I'll take, thanks, Kathy, for having that. The reason this is on here is a few residents received like intimidating letters, as to like a side yard sign, already voted for that person, blah, blah. Nothing direct harassment, as in like, if you do that, it would be X, Y, and Z. I will say I've had experience with this, but I just want to remind folks, in terms of this does not represent Franklin Park. I don't think anybody here does this. I do not do this. Anybody in my council mates do it either. But yeah, just encourage civility. And if there's anything that happens, please report. That's it. Oh, yeah, sorry. One thing I want to mention is there's an official Facebook page for the borough and an unofficial one. So the unofficial one has about an average of 10 posts, 10 posts a day, and it seems like there's a lot of accusations being thrown on this and back and forth. My recommendation to me personally, I do not engage on there. I advise you don't do it. If you do, say your own corral. Does not represent the borough's views.
I believe that a lot of the residents prefer this issue to be right to.
Yeah, so, Southern Station made me aware that Officer Mooney took a few letters, but none of them contained any kind of threatening or harassing statements. They were more about their view versus the opposing view.
I get numerous each week telling me that Dave McCormick's no good, Venkat's no good, Deluzio's no good, Jeremy Schaefer's no good, Rob McCurry. I get them, there's these packs out in Harrisburg, they're sending them out all the time, and they all tell you that
Yeah.
I get them from both parties.
I
This
know
is
it-
distinguishable,
yeah,
because this is somebody who sought out an address and directly addressed somebody based upon the stuff that was on the
Yeah,
property.
it's a little
That's
different than a flyer. It was an
Okay.
actual, an
Much
actual
different.
letter.
Oh,
The
okay.
person took an effort to write a letter, sign their name with their real name.
Reminding them that, hey, I know where you are, and because I I've got your address here, and I'm
Did it say
personally
that?
addressing it.
Oh, you
Yeah.
because they mailed it.
That's right.
Yeah, it
It's-
said, I
it's-
saw you, I
it's
see,
a call
I see
out.
your house, you see my
Yeah.
number. That was
Yeah.
the
Oh.
first.
Yeah,
That was the.
so it is
that's-
distinguishable from
Yeah.
the usual pack stuff.
I get the usual pack stuff, but
We all
we
do.
will,
Yeah.
I will vote for anybody if I believe everything.
Are there any reports from council? I'll look at the first, Tom.
You know, I had one other thought, and we could probably talk about it later. I thought more about the home rule. I've been thinking about it. And I thought that before we move forward, one thing that may not take very much time and might be a good exercise is if we were to take a look at, since we have at our 2024 budget, and let's assume that we had to do 750,000 additional stormwater work. How would we fund it and what would it do to our receipt of money? Like, would we raise, property tax? Would we, I don't think we can raise our local income tax above the ones.
With a simulation.
What I'm trying to do is get a real sense for what that type of impact
Okay.
to our current form of budget. And then we can look at that and say, well, maybe then moving forward with the change is worth it.
Okay, understood, and I have reached
I
out.
don't
to
know, that would be a
Yeah.
hard thing to do, just say, put a $750,000 line item in the spreadsheet and say, how much short, what we have to do to come up with that money.
Yeah, not on the master spreadsheet though, but like a simulation.
No,
Yeah.
no, this is just like a test case, so we would see what impact that would have on the millage.
Yeah, that's fine. And I did find Sully, I did reach out to Williamsburg, the mayor and the president, I have not heard back.
Okay,
We'll follow up. Okay, that's good.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good.
There,
I'm good.
Laura?
I talked to a few people this week about the senior luncheons, and I'll speak to you about this. I have a few businesses who may be interested in sponsoring, but first, I talked to Zach, we need to figure out what we want to do, if we want to do it. And Zach and I talked about maybe putting on the website or on the social media accounts, asking people if they're actually interested, seeing how much interest we get before we go too far down in this
Yeah.
direction.
And Uday and I actually had conversation on this morning, Steve. And, within the budget, I think we should maybe throw a budget item in there with some costs that we can work with. But once you and I know how much we have to work with in a budget, then that could give us a little more feed as to what we need to do. Agree with that?
Sounds good, yeah, and you and I can connect on that.
Yeah, you and I can connect.
Brian? Okay, sounds good. Thank you, everyone. Let's go into executive session.